you gotta put 20% down. It's actually 3%, the minimum amount of money to get a conventional loan, if you're a first-time home buyer. So, I don't expect you all to know all that I know or all that Rick knows. I'm gonna say it's gonna be near impossible on the mortgage side. It's gonna be impossible. No, nothing's impossible. If you wanted to, you could. You'd have to spend another 25 years doing what I've been doing to know what I know. But a lot of consumers, think about, you know, the exposure you have to the mortgage world, the knowledge that you have, you're exposed to the mortgage side of things exponentially more than the average consumer. And yet you still don't have all of the answers. So when you go into a conversation with a consumer, despite the information that's available online, I think I'm safe to say that you should assume that they still don't know enough. They're not as informed as they should be. And the information that they do have may not be reliable. Sorry, folks. I'll turn this off now as well, sorry. So it's going to be a matter of when you have somebody that's interested, starting to ask them certain questions. So with Cologne, you know, the way I suggested, Cologne reached out to me, you know, asked me how. He said he's got a client that he's talked to that wanted to buy a home. They said they want to buy a home sometime at some point, but they don't know if they can. They think the credit's good, or they don't think the credit's that good. The simple questions were, or the agenda is simply helping that consumer make the first decision. So, you know, by the way, you know, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'd say for a long time, the first decade of my career, I succumbed to projecting what my thoughts and my feelings were, you know, about, you know, what my potential client might be thinking about what I'm sharing with them. But in no way was I ever doing, you know, anything wrong. So I've now started leading and working with clients and consumers, you know, from a point of conviction, that I'm simply here as an expert to help them get out of a situation what they want. It's as simple as that. And so that's what your jobs are as well. You're simply out there as a professional in the real estate world, trying to help that consumer get out of this world what they want with regards to home buying, whether it's their first home, putting a family in a home, you know, upsizing, downsizing. That's all you're doing. And so at no point should you ever question what you're doing, as long as you're doing the right things for a consumer. And I say this as I lead into, don't worry about questions you might ask a client. If they don't want to answer questions that you're asking, such as, do you want to buy a home? If you had the ability to, would you like to? You know, when would you like to buy one? Well, most people, when they start thinking about buying a home, they'd like to buy that new home right now if they could. There's certain situations where they may not be able to, you know, couple getting divorced, it's just not, you know, one party might want to be out yesterday, you know, but even still, they just may not be able to do it. You know, so there's reasons, again, that you just can't. Somebody had a foreclosure 2 or 3 years ago, they just can't buy a home right now, traditionally. There are ways, but again, a different topic. But for the average consumer, when you ask, would you like to buy a home? Or, by the way, anything I'm saying here could also be used in, would you like to sell your home? So this isn't just about buyers. This is gonna, you know, you should be able to use this information talking to buyers and to sellers as well. Would you like to sell your home? No, I'd like to sell my home, but. There's always a but. If they haven't listed it already, they're thinking about it. If nothing else, you want to get to the point where you can help them with information. Well, if you'd like to sell your home, or if you'd like to buy your home, would you like to have information to help you do that? So again, we'll go back to just the mortgage side. So when would you like to buy a home? If you could snap your fingers and just pick a date or a time frame, when would you like to buy? Most people, once you start honing in on, like, asking them specific questions, that's when you're gonna start realizing that they'd like to do it now. So if there was a way for you to buy a home in the next 2 months, would you like to do it? Let them start answering the questions. They're starting to now tell themselves. It's a psychological exercise that's happening in the subconscious, helping them formulate answers for themselves to then help you. They'll start to realize as you ask those questions, you are helping them solve their internal questions that they have themselves. So, I'm gonna stop here for a moment, I'm gonna switch gears. Thanks for everybody listening intently, I can tell. Anybody have any concerns about just being a little bit more direct? So my suggestion is to be more direct. Don't be shy about asking the questions. You can't be shy when you're trying to do something right, going back to that point. Just ask the questions. And so I'm not gonna go over all the questions and or answers, but what I'd like to do when we're done between myself and Rick, I'd like to just sit down individually, we'll split up at some point, not necessarily today, but one-on-one, just go over some dialogue, you know, the objections that you might hear, or if anybody wants to throw some out, what are some of the objections? Like, for instance, a couple of you said that you know some people that would like to buy homes, but they haven't been pre-approved, and you're not showing them homes now. What's one of those reasons? Can somebody give me any reason why are you not showing them homes right now? Why are they not pre-approved, and why are you not showing them homes?
Guess I'll wait until the spring.
Wait until the spring?
Yeah.
Okay. Good answer. Why?
It's not ready yet. They, they don't wanna make any move in the winter with the holidays and everything else coming up, so. I actually had them both where they were looking sooner than later, and then they said, you know what, we thought about it more. We think we're gonna do it in the spring. One example is, one individual has an in-ground pool, which they never opened up during the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanna have that opened up for showings and things like that, so.
Okay.
They're willing to wait.
Okay. Do they have, I guess, good explanation or good reason to not be doing something? Did they take any steps to get pre-approved, have all the ducks in a row?
No.
Do they know are they comfortable navigating? So again, it might be premature today, October, and they don't think they're gonna sell to the spring. I don't know when the best time to sell a home would be, but again, having a pool open certainly would be attractive.
Their feeling is that the sale of their home, they'd be moving to South Jersey, and they'd take that money and just buy a condo. That there'd be very little, if any, financing, it would be just cash.
Okay.
The other individual I'm dealing with is going to sell her house and then buy another house in the same area. It's downsizing people.
Okay.
Girls are at school, done.
Okay. So the one that's waiting till spring to open the pool, again, I don't know when the best time to buy or sell would be. Right, $1 million question perhaps? Perhaps you talk about that with Bob or Jen, whoever your manager is, I'm not sure. But those people at some point, they're gonna need to figure out how to do that transaction. So, part of the reservations at some point will be, when to do it and how to do it. So that's one where that should be a check, in early next year, those should be two transactions, well, maybe one transaction for you. I don't know that you've got the purchase down in South Jersey for the one.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanna do with Cologne, again, I'm gonna keep using Cologne as an example, because just having in the week's time, having 4 new potential buyers, 2 of them definitely won't be able to buy till next year because they need to do some credit repair. But Cologne's now gonna be able to start checking off people that he's already has in his system, working with us to have a mortgage materialize so they can go out and buy homes. They'll be first-time home buyers, not as complicated as those couples, but these are people, if you get them set up properly, when it is time to get going, they're gonna need to have a good solid plan so they can feel comfortable about the whole thing as well. Because buying and selling, there's still gonna be, I would expect for another year or two, sellers are still gonna be leery about people wanting to make offers that have home sale contingencies. So one of your jobs that I see as the biggest sticking point in that situation is the home sale contingency. So if you haven't talked to them yet about the home sale contingency, hey, by the way, John and Sarah, one thing I would like you to do is just formulate a plan so we can eliminate a home sale contingency, because, even if it's not a multiple bid situation, a seller's still gonna wanna feel comfortable taking an offer where there's no home sale contingency, right? So we still wanna make that seller feel comfortable when that comes around. Thanks for volunteering. So with January, at a minimum, we should be talking to them by January. I may not do a mortgage for either one of them, but I'm happy to talk to them about it. It sounds like one might need a mortgage, and that mortgage piece could be a sticking point. So, but how is the one gonna buy another house if they haven't sold the first one yet? So,
Just to interject, the spring market, just so you know, I have to take pandemic out of the equation, it starts in January, every year,
Well, that's
for
what I was-
decades, it always starts in January.
Can I ask
Yeah.
a quick question? Charlie,
Yes.
do they have exterior pictures or were their pool open?
They do, they have a couple, I mean, it's a really nice location, and the in-ground pool, as you probably would know, makes the backyard. They've lived there for 30 years. There were some pictures of the in-ground pool on a previous listing, when they tried listing it like in 1985. But I understand I couldn't really use those pictures because they could be property of the other agent, what have you, so.
They haven't taken a picture of
Yeah,
the
since
pool since
1985.
1985.
No, but they have, but I don't think they were
Everybody uses
pictures for
pictures
scenic, they were probably just parties with people in the pictures and things like that. I don't think there was like a walk out there on a nice, beautiful sunny day and start snapping pictures. Like I said, they haven't taken the cover off the pool in at least a year. So.
That's strange, but.
Yeah, well, you know what, they're a little up there in age. Their kids have, gone to school and moved on and have their own families now, so they don't use the pool as often as they used to.
Okay.
But in my conversation with them, they were looking at South Jersey, they were ready to roll, I met with them several times at their kitchen table. And then they really started thinking they have a lot of stuff that they've collected in the 20 to 30 years they've lived there. So they wanna get rid of that stuff, so they're really doing that this winter. And then come spring, open up the pool, get everything in order. And I've already sent them documentation on preparing your home for sale and everything else.
Okay.
So, but you're right, but I think the pictures that they probably took may not be appropriate for listings. You know?
Do the shots before you.
Yeah, exactly, unless you get the right buyer and they just take over from there, I don't know.
Okay. So you've got at least 1 or 2 transactions already lined up for next year, if not sooner.
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing, just start putting them, make those potentials, set them so that they will be realities, and help those clients realize how it can get to reality by educating them, informing them, sending them the information, et cetera. So, I'm gonna start talking about this now. One of the objections, go back to Mark Velez's scenario. If Mark had gone through this exercise, he wouldn't, and I know it's brazen for me or blunt to say that Mark was doing a disservice to his client by not ensuring, and again, Mark may not have known, but now he knows, now you know, he didn't do a good enough job vetting the client's original pre-approval or vetting the person that he's working with the mortgage company. In this case, it happened to be Rocket Mortgage. I hate to seem like I'm bashing them, but the stories seem to come up more with Rocket Mortgage, although they're pretty busy, but, so some of the questions I would ask here to help you get this mortgage dialogue going, and it's kind of an open-ended question, it could be a loaded question. Are you 100% confident when you're talking to a buyer, say you're at an open house, somebody says they're pre-approved, are you 100% confident, how would I say that?
That they're not lying?
No. So, I guess you could ask, because I've asked the question, are you 100% sure, that your pre-approval is as solid as it can be? Are you 100% sure that you've gone over all of the options that are available to you? Number 3, this bullet point number 3, are you 100% ready, willing, and able? I didn't write those words down here, but RWA, you do need to write that down. We've talked about that now for a year or more. Ready, willing, and able. Most buyers, I would not say, are 100% sure themselves that they're ready, willing, and able. They think they can, they know they can, but this implies a lot more. Are they 100% ready, willing, and able to make their best offer? And that's a loaded question. Their best offer could mean a number of things. This Mark's client, for instance, was trying to do a 3% down loan. On all those offers he'd made, he'd offered 3% down. $400,000 home, so roughly $12,000. Not a lot of money, and I explained to the gentleman, it's probably one of the reasons why you weren't winning your bids, because you were just putting a low down payment down. Your deposit was only that $12,000. And when, I didn't get that far with him, I don't know what his initial deposit, where it was, and second deposit. Even if it was just 12,000, as his initial deposit, as the whole deposit, probably not enough. Through, interviewing him, I uncovered that he and his girlfriend had another $30,000 in a savings account that they just didn't wanna use for the purpose of buying the home. However, those of you that have heard me go over this before, that $30,000 could have been used for excess deposit. So like that one piece alone, instead of going into a transaction with just $12,000, they could have gone in and put $32,000 down as an excess deposit, and only having to commit 12 of it as the down payment, they get that $30,000 back at closing. So I've talked about the excess deposit. If you don't recall that, write excess deposit down. If you're not sure how it works, we can talk about that later. I'm not gonna go into those details, but this is one of those points. That couple they weren't prepared. They weren't prepared properly for this market. So are you 100% prepared? Another question you could ask. When you ask somebody, are you 100% prepared? Few people, I'd be surprised if somebody says, absolutely, I'm 100% ready, willing, and able. I know all of my options. So don't be shy about asking, are you sure that you know all of your options? I'm not really sure. You know what? You need to be informed. So my dialogue would be, and I've been doing this for years, no one's ever yelled at me, I've never gotten in trouble for it. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna have Keith or Rick give you a call to make sure you know all of your options. If you're missing an option, or you could rephrase this question. There's 100 different ways you could ask these questions, but you have to ask the questions. If you were missing an option that could help you, would you like to know? Maybe that's a better way to ask the question. If there was another option out there to help you win a bid, to help you be more competitive in this market, would you like to know? I can't imagine somebody saying no, they wouldn't wanna know. If they say yes to that question, great. I can't answer it for you, but I'm gonna have Keith or Rick call you. If they say, oh, I don't know, okay, then you could go into what we do, introduce us, but now you've started that dialogue, you've planted the seed that they may not have all of the options, they'd like to know their options, and you can go into that soft sell at that point, that, your office, and I've sat with each one of you, our office, so you can say this, whether we've done a transaction together or not, or whether we've done 10 or not, collectively as a group, our office relies very heavily on Keith and Rick. Their company's been working with our office since 2013, 7, 8 years. That's a long time for one mortgage group to be with a real estate office, by the way. It's somewhat uncommon, actually. It's because of the value that we bring to the table. Our office brings a lot of value to your office, and so you can say that with confidence. I'm confident you can say that with confidence. Again, I wouldn't have been here, I wouldn't be here for 8 years, we wouldn't be doing this. So have the conviction and the confidence in what your office does collectively to help you sell. You may not have the same conviction as Stephanie. Charlie, we've not done a transaction yet. Jake, we've not done a transaction yet, but we're your best bet to help that consumer make the next step, or make their next best step, or make the appropriate step to get out of it what they want.
Can I just add something? It also takes the pressure, I found, it takes the pressure off of me as an agent to try to deliver the information that I feel like they should know. I mean, for me, I've worked with Rick on a few now, and he's been amazing. He's the first person that I always say to talk to, because it takes the pressure off of me to feel like I need to know everything. And I know that he's gonna do exactly what he needs to do to inform them enough to continue to move the process forward, And it's like our third one we're about to do, right? Morgan closes November 8th, and they've all been first-time buyers. And I feel like they're more interested in getting the information early on. Like, they know that they don't know things.
Mhm.
Sometimes with other buyers, you know, either they're bringing their own mortgage person that they've used in the past or whatever, but if you're working with a first-time buyer and you hook them up early, like with Rick, we've had a good run of it so far, and he has given everybody the confidence that they need, that they're, you know, doing everything right, and they want to know, you know, they don't know, they know what they don't know, or they don't know what they don't know, so they're more anxious to find out and be receptive to, you know, having those conversations, I found anyway.
Yeah, I do think the first-time home buyers are a little bit easier
Yeah.
to move the needle with.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'd say that versed, now so well versed that I don't have an issue helping the needle move forward with the existing buyer, you know, or the you know, previous buyer, current homeowner. That conversation is just completely, it's a different animal, and it's just a matter of how to approach those people. Again, for each scenario, again, I'd like to just do some one-on-one stuff and just go over scenarios as they come up. So I'm gonna encourage you, as you get the next time, or whoever you're working with now, or would like to be working with now, I can help you with some suggestions as to how to move the conversation forward. All you'd like to be doing is be moving the conversation forward until you can realize, you know, a transaction. So it's just a matter of how to move those conversations forward. You know, millions of conversations. I couldn't, again, go over every example. I'm sure you're all picking up, you know, what I'm laying down here, as they say. I'd like to encourage open houses. Was it Alan that sent out a note, said he wanted to help with an open house, I think I saw?
Richie.
Oh, Rich, okay, Rich. Being in there, being in it and talking to consumers, of course, is huge. I don't know if Rick likes this expression or not, but I've been using it for a while. If you're not talking to them about something, how can you be talking to them about anything? The anything we wanna talk to them about is,
It's Alice. It's like Alice in Wonderland.
Sound like Yogi Berra.
That's right.
but do you get it? If you wanna talk to them about real estate, but if you're not talking to them at all, you can't talk to them about real estate. Simple as
If you're
that.
not first, you're last.
Okay, now
What's that?
If you're not first, you're last.
All right, Ricky.
Second is a loser. No.
All right, open house, oh, another tip while you're at open houses. Chris Cleffi and I did an open house. I went and stopped in, and I was doing one of my rounds. I think he was the second of 3 that I wanted to go to on a Sunday, 2 or 3 Sundays ago. And Chris is not shy about talking to people. So I suggested to Chris, hey, you know, as I had witnessed in a previous open house the week prior, maybe 2, the agents that were working those open houses, as the clients, potential buyers were walking through the house, they would ask, the agent would ask, did you have any questions about the house? Some yes, more often than not, no, thank you. What I had suggested to them and then to Chris, as they're walking through the house, as you're asking if they had any questions about the house, if and when they say no, or after they've answered yes or no, ask if they had any questions about financing this house or a house like this. And while I was there, when he asked those questions, 3 people, and I said to Chris, you know, use me while I'm here, I ended up talking to 3 different people about financing. One didn't necessarily like the house, you know, but they had questions about financing. So we're able to take that conversation to another level just by asking that question. So I'm gonna suggest that when you're at an open house, don't be shy about asking if they had questions about financing. You're not gonna have the answers. Don't expect to have the answers. You will have at least one good answer though. That's what you need to have, one good answer to every question that works. You know, it could be something like, well, that's great. You know what? I'm gonna have somebody follow up with you to answer your questions. Or if you have questions, what's the question? I'll get the answers for you. I'll get the answers for you. And if you're, you know, if you're not sure, if you're not comfortable yet enough with having a conversation like I would be, you know what? If somebody asks me about an attorney or an insurance person, I have people. I don't give a person a name. If I think somebody should be working with like use Matt Ronco. If I think somebody should be working with Matt Ronco, I don't give a client Matt's information and say, hey, you should call Matt. I tell that client, I'm gonna have Matt give you a call, or I'm gonna connect you two, or I'll email them both. So I'm not shy about it, because I believe, and I like Matt and I work very similarly. There's other good attorneys as well, but I think that person should be talking to Matt, so I'm going to just go ahead with what my conviction is, and I'm not doing anything wrong by saying I'm gonna have Matt give you a call. I then have to let them make the decision as to whether or not they want me to have Matt call them, right? When you don't suggest that you're going to do something for a client, you've taken the opportunity away from them to say yes or no to you. Who's ever been invited to a party? Who's ever not been invited to a party that they were wondering why they didn't get an invitation to? Anybody?
This is going in a weird direction.
All right. My point is another expression.
You guys, be honest, please.
Thank you. My point is, I've said for years that we get invited to things. It doesn't have to be a party. Just too busy. Somebody said, I know you're too busy, you wouldn't want to come. I corrected them immediately. I said, listen, I'd always rather have the opportunity to say no than to not be invited at all. Would you agree? Okay. So same thing, as you're talking to consumers, there's nothing wrong with you assuming that they don't know as much as you know. There's nothing wrong with assuming. I think it's fair to say that they don't know as much as I might know, or as Rick might know, or a mortgage professional, a real mortgage professional might know. So when you don't ask the questions, you're eliminating opportunities for them to answer a yes or no to you. Think about it that way. Is that a good way to look at that? If you don't ask the questions about things that you know they should be learning about and informed about, if you don't ask that question, who's doing a disservice? You are. Plain and simple. So if you're a real estate professional, your job is to help that consumer. But
I have a question, well, this is not right in line with what you're saying, but when you were talking about open houses, I'm gonna have a listing right around the corner from here that's kind of a fixer-upper. And in terms of a renovation loan, does it make sense to have information there at the time,
Sure.
of an open house about, I didn't think about it, because
Yeah.
I'm just getting there now.
I can send it to you.
Okay.
True, no
That'd be
problem.
good.
if
I'll
you
send
think
you
that's a
that.
good way to market that home, if you think that people will come in and they won't have the vision, listen, no one's gonna go into that home having any idea how a renovation works or have any comfort with the renovation loan. So you're gonna use that as a talking point for sure,
Okay.
if they're comfortable with it. And you're not gonna get into too much about it.
No, I'm
But
not.
from that open house, so from today's meeting, from that open house, your job is to figure out, as you're walking around taking notes, by the way, talking with Jess at her most recent open house, too many people came through for her to be able to be clear on her notes when she wanted to do her follow-up. So Jess is gonna start walking around with a pad, not to be rude, but she's gonna say, getting into a conversation, if there's something noteworthy, hey, that's, however she's gonna say it, that's noteworthy, I just wanted to make a note of that. So, but she's not gonna be shy about doing that. I think if I were talking to somebody, I don't know what I'm not looking at homes these days, but if I went in and an agent was legitimately taking a note, about our conversation, something that was noteworthy, and then I got a follow-up call based on that specific note, I'd be impressed. So, certainly gonna help Jess with her notes. So, when you finish that open house, I would start taking notes as to who has mortgage questions. If you don't know what the questions are, that's okay for now, but find out if they have questions, and would they like those questions answered. They might have a pre-approval already. I'll get into that in a minute. So, if they have finance questions, they might say, I have a pre-approval already. Probably gonna be the most common question. Okay. So, today in our office, we're working on 2 loans, maybe a third, where people, I got phone calls, they were under contract to buy homes, and their mortgage company had already turned them down. They had just gone under contract, and within a couple of days, they couldn't get a loan. So now we're working on those loans. Thankfully, the other mortgage company and or bank, they were close, they just couldn't figure it out, and they just turned the clients away. We were fortunately able to figure out solutions for these people. So you have to know that banks wouldn't have underwriters if everybody qualified for a loan. Not everybody does, and banks and mortgage companies, loan officers, there are a lot of people that just don't do a good enough job. And I don't wanna scare you into thinking every deal's gonna fall apart, you know, and it may seem insulting to the more affluent. You might think it might seem insulting that somebody that's, you know, affluent could pay cash. You know, I could pay cash for this house. You'll hear that someday. You know, they don't want to. They want to get a mortgage. Even though they might qualify, they still don't have enough information about how to go about making their best offer. So that's a different dialogue, right? If they've never bought a home before, if they're just a first-time home buyer, I don't want to say just, if they're a first-time home buyer, they don't have a lot of money to work with, they're gonna be more apt to want to seek advice. A person that has bought a home or 15 homes in the past, they're gonna be less apt, I've found, until they don't have the success. A story I'll share, a retired Marine, 20 years, working as CEO, you know, in the private sector now, been all over the world, and shared with me, he's bought multiple homes, 20 plus in his lifetime, him and his wife, Ron and Pam. Wasn't following, I forget who the agent was, doesn't matter. Wanted to do it his way. I said, fine, here's what we're gonna do. The one point he was stuck on, now, appreciated him as a veteran and his service. He wanted to take advantage of the VA loan, no money down. He wanted to buy a property for, purchase price was around $600,000. He kept making offers with a little bit of money down as a deposit, not much of an offer, he wasn't winning bids. This happened a couple of times, and you know, I kept saying, here's what I would suggest, and at one point he just gave up. He said, Keith, just tell me what to do. So, if he were here, I could probably get away with calling him a stubborn old fool. We developed that nice, you know, that type of rapport. So he switched gears completely, ended up making a deposit for no money down mortgage, but the deposit was $150,000. So imagine, you know, that's not a conversation that many of you are gonna have comfortably. I work with these numbers all day long. I see what people have in their bank accounts. I can get them over that hump. So until they start listening, well, once they start listening, our chances of success are going to go up. Case in point, his very next offer, made that offer with $150,000 excess deposit, and he won that next bid. So Ron and Pam are now in their new home. So, but I know how to have those conversations. Those conversations are a little bit different. Again, you gotta be diplomatic, tactful, etc. I don't know that I'm pushy. I think I'm politely persistent in some of my ways when I'm talking to clients. But again, it stems from just asking questions after question, and the questions are for them to be answering their own questions. What are your reservations? I'll ask people point blank, well, if you don't wanna do it this way, why don't you wanna do it this way? Or what are your reservations about this? More often than not, the reservations are unwarranted. Or they're reservations about why they don't wanna do it. Ron didn't wanna put up that much money for fear he was gonna lose the money. Deposits, you don't lose your deposits unless you do something fraudulent, you know, willfully negligent, misrepresent yourself, right? You don't lose those deposits. I had one client lose a deposit because she walked away the day before closing, just walked away.
Yeah, that was mine.
Was it yours?
They did buy.
They bought something, but was that the couple of the seller said something? Okay, well, we don't need to go into specifics, but, now, I'm not an attorney, so when I say that to a client, I say, when you go into attorney review, or beforehand, if you have an attorney now, you know, go over this idea with your attorney. So by the way, you know, I do encourage them to talk to their attorney about what I'm sharing with them. But I'm very, you know, this is a conversation I've had 1,000 times. So whatever the reservation is, it's usually an unwarranted reservation, you guys, or their concern, and I help them with this part of the dialogue as well, which over time, perhaps you'll be able to help them as well. Sometimes their immediate concern pales in comparison to the main thing that they want. The main thing they want is to buy a house or to sell a house. So I help them, I mean, it's like I'm counseling it at the same time. So just getting back to the mortgage fees, and you are all counselors as well, if you haven't learned that yet, right? How many counseling sessions have you had, Janet or Karen, with consumers? So you're wearing multiple hats when you're out there. But again, an open, candid dialogue with clients, I think they're gonna appreciate it. If they don't appreciate it, for me, if they don't appreciate it, I can only take them so far. You know, then they can't help themselves. So, again, 1,000 different ways to ask these types of questions. Now, the other thing, when you're talking to a client that has a pre-approval, so one of the objections was, do you have any mortgage questions? No, I'm all set, I already have a pre-approval. I think one thing that might move them off center is if you ask this question at the bottom, well, do you have a pre-commitment? They can't say yes. In most cases, they're not gonna say yes to that question. They're gonna have a hard time saying yes. So you do need to understand the difference between a pre-approval and a pre-commitment. Aside from, who knows what the pre-commitment is when I talk about the pre-commitment?
I think.
Yeah.
Did it already go through underwriting?
Yeah, correct. It's already been through underwriting. Now, I've had this conversation a number of times, and it wasn't until I asked somebody, do you know what underwriting is? The person actually said no, they didn't. So for me to say to them that their loan has already been through underwriting, it was a first-time home buyer, I was trying to explain the importance of our pre-commitment. They didn't know what an underwriter was. So, you know, but if you can ask this question, you could create another bit of a dialogue and say, well, you know, the pre-commitment is what's gonna help you make a strong offer. You know, and in this market, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you wanna make the strongest offer possible, right? Yes, so you're leading them, I mean, you know these answers already. No one's gonna say no, they don't wanna make the strongest offer possible. When you find the right house, do you wanna make the strongest offer that you can? It's another good question. When you find the right house, do you wanna make the strongest offer that you can? Yes, well then you need I would urge you to get a pre-commitment. Have your file reviewed, not just by your loan officer at the bank. Who would you get the pre-approval from? Bank of America. Okay, so Bank of America, they don't issue a pre-commitment. Rocket Mortgage, they don't issue a pre-commitment. It may say it, it's not as solid as actually sending it to a human person. You know, your loan officer, just like our loan officer that we work with, Keith or Rick, they can't sign off on a loan. They know how to get loans done, and then they actually submit it into processing, and actually the person that signs off for a bank. So when you're explaining what an underwriter is, that's the person that actually has the ability and authority to sign off for a bank or a mortgage company, that bank's gonna commit to lending that person money. So if you're not sure that your loan's gone that far, then you don't have a pre-commitment, and you're not really as ready as you think you might be. You know, just having a pre-approval isn't good enough today. Jess?
Is there anything that could make the buyer scared to say, I wanna do a pre-commitment? Because commitment is something they're always scared of.
So the term commitment
Yeah,
alone.
so it, like, in terms of credit, in terms of anything that would make them scared, that we can, you know, just clarify that for them.
Well, sure. They're gonna be concerned about credit. So the pre-commitment shouldn't scare them. The terminology might, to your point, the term commitment. Am I
Yeah.
committed now? Well, we're committing to them. They're not committing to us. You could you know, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're not committing to us. So it's a lender giving them a pre-commitment. You could also say an underwriter's approval. Is it a true underwriter's approval? So we can work on that language if you don't wanna use the term pre-commitment. Pre-commitment would be something that more people would be familiar with if they've purchased a home in the past. They would know what a commitment is. I presume First-time home buyers may not even know what a commitment is, to your point. So, we can work on rewording that. Yeah,
We're all agents, we have a little bit more training than the average consumer, and half of us are here because we don't know what a pre-commitment is, so why, of course. Oh, I bought homes before, I
Yeah.
still don't know what a pre-commitment
Yeah.
versus a commitment is, so, yeah.
so,
Assume
Is
you're correct.
pre-approval and pre-commitment different?
yes,
I'm sorry, what did you say?
is the pre-approval and the pre-commitment, are they different?
15.
Your standard pre-approval, which Rick and I do all day long, look at somebody's credit, and we won't write one unless we've reviewed their income and their assets, or whatever we need to get that loan done, you know, the basics, right?
How quickly, I don't mean to interrupt your thought, I just did, but
Hold that thought.
yes, well, that's the question.
If you can hold it. So the pre-approval is me and or Rick, the loan officer, writing the letter saying you're pre-approved.
Which most people usually have it,
That's what most people get.
yes.
Most people are only getting a pre-approval.
Yeah.
Now, in many cases today still, like the two, the files we have working right now, I said that they were turned down. The one person hadn't even given the other company any of their paperwork. The woman's self-employed, the woman's only been working for 8 months at a job. She hadn't given any income documentation to the company that issued the pre-approval. So that company issued a pre-approval without reviewing this woman's income. Her son works part-time at a pizzeria and gets a disability income as well. They hadn't reviewed any of that stuff. And I needed 2-year work history in order to do a loan for somebody. She had been self-employed on and off for the past decade. She hadn't provided any tax returns to prove that she'd been working at all. So we've got this 50-year-old person with only 8 months of a work history. It just doesn't jive. So we've been spending now a week. The woman's already under contract by the time we spoke with her. Unfortunately, her agent is newer. And so, while the woman doesn't seem all that worried, the agent's certainly scared, right? But we are gonna get it done. Thankfully, I mean, the woman gave enough current information, or shared the information she shared with the loan officer seems to be working out. But nobody vetted what she told them. And that's one of the biggest problems with the pre-approval. Self-employed people, especially, although most self-employed people that we talk to today are a little bit more aware about the mortgage process, and knowing that, you know, while a contractor may run $1 million through his business, a decade ago, I asked a contractor how much money you make, or self-employed, 1099 person, you're all 1099, you know, you might show 100, 200, 300,000 on 1099. That's not how much money you make. We wanna know how much money you make after all your expenses. So, for the longest time, we'd have people tell us they made $200,000-300,000. That's before, you know, if it's a contractor, especially all the expenses, wind that down to, you know, 100 or 50,000. A gentleman, you know, gross revenue 400,000. Somehow his accountant got his income down to $30,000. But he made 400 as far as he was concerned, right? But not really. So to your point, the pre-approval and the pre-commitment not the same. The pre-approval gets issued quite often without people even supplying documentation to prove their income or their assets.
But then you have
The pre-qual,
Yeah,
but nobody,
yeah,
but-
that I do not even.
you wouldn't.
Yeah.
But a lot of companies now, nobody even writes pre-qual on their letters anymore. They
Okay.
hardly do. Cause they know, you as the realtor, like when I write a pre-approval letter, I know it's gonna go to a realtor or two, you, and then the person you present an offer to. So you don't, so if I sent you a letter as a pre-qual, you call me back, Keith, I don't want a pre-qual, I need a pre-approval. So no loan officer today even puts the term pre-qual in a letter anymore, cause they know you're not gonna accept it. Even though it might be a piece of crap. The two, pretty true, right? Can I use crap?
Sure.
Okay.
Use the others.
We don't have to edit that then, good. What's that?
It's Thursday, isn't it?
It's Thursday, good, I'm wearing jeans. So now we take the pre-approval, somebody's provided documentation, assets, and income, but now we wanna take it to the next level and get a bona fide underwriter's approval. Underwriter's approval, the pre-commitment, as I've called it, a bona fide underwriter's approval. So it's not just the loan officer now, the loan officer's the salesperson, wants to move to the next transaction, wants to get that person in home, make the realtor feel good about the pre-approval, get going. I'm being a bit cynical, cynic in my own industry, because I've seen a lot of crap, unfortunately, crappy work. So we're gonna take that to the next level, so that the income's verified, the assets are in fact verified by the actual person that's signing off. Now, the power of this pre-approval, pardon me, the power of this pre-commitment, this bona fide underwriter's approval, is when you go to make an offer, the buyers, the sellers, if they understand correctly, which is what Rick and I will help with, you do need to understand the importance of this. We've won bids because our clients, we proved our clients were the most ready, willing, and able. They didn't just do a pre-approval, they took the steps, committed to getting their loan started already by getting a bona fide underwriter's approval up to X amount of dollars, $450, $500,000, whatever it is. So the sellers now know that they don't have to worry about that person getting their mortgage. Most sellers also are misinformed to think that the pre-approval is solid. Your standard pre-approval isn't as solid as most people would think. So there's strength in that pre-commitment. But we're getting off on a tangent though, just so I can express the importance of how to open up the dialogue about getting more people to be open to being informed. So your job from here on out is to figure out how to get.
Starting to forget, no. Just how much longer?
Oh, sorry.
Is it pre-qual for it to go under, you guys
To
are.
get to underwriting?
To give the pre-qualification, cause you guys are quick with.
Pre-commitment.
Pre-commitment, I'm sorry, yeah.
Couple days.
Okay.
If they get us what we need.
Right.
Couple days,
Okay.
at that.
Sorry, now you forgot.
Yeah. One of the benefits of having the underwriter's pre-approval up front is, we got a client that just went into attorney review. Before they were out of attorney review, they already had their loan approval. Like actual approval for that property, before they even came out of attorney review. So, if they've already started that process, you can say, hey, if you're presenting an offer to a seller's agent, this client's already been through underwriting. So if you've got the listing, you should now know and understand that difference. That's gonna be impactful. We have helped clients win bids through other strategies as well. Excuse me. With this bona fide underwriter's approval, that's how you can compete with a cash offer, by the way. Excuse me. We've helped clients win bids when they weren't the highest bidder. So I think the industry in our area at least has gone to final and best when you're doing multiple bids. They got away from highest and best. It used to be highest and best. Now it's final and best.
There's no such thing as a final offer.
Yeah, which is never final.
In the state of New Jersey.
So